Hi, my name is Erika Ayers, and this is my physics final project. I will be talking about some of the physics that goes into playing volleyball. One of the most important things to remember as you're playing is Newton's third law, which is that every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction. And this comes to play when you are receiving. If the ball has 5 joules and it's coming straight towards you, and you meet the ball receiving it with 10 joules, theoretically, that added energy makes the ball a little bit less controllable than if you met the ball with maybe 3 joules of energy. It conserves the energy in the ball, so instead of the ball going wherever and how high it's going, you can set it kind of perfectly above the net, if that makes sense. You don't want the ball to go so high, and you don't want the ball to be so low. So if you're not meeting the ball to compensate for at least gravity that's weighing down on it, then the ball is going to have not very much momentum in the end. Some other notes here are the fact that the ball is elastic, so it has some deformation, and you can't really see this when you're playing, but for a few milliseconds, I think I have a moment where you can see where the ball is deformed on the ground, and that's how we are able to get a bounce. One last thing about receiving, the ball's forces are going to be straight up. So depending on where your shoulders are and where your arms are and the angle, the ball could either go straight up or it could go off to the side, or if you have one arm lowered and one arm up, it could go towards it could go towards the angle that you're creating with your arms. So the ball is always going to hit your arms perpendicularly. So if you need the ball to go to a specific position, you need to make sure that you're parallel to that angled position, so the ball goes straight up towards that area. Let's talk a little bit about serving. So one of the biggest effects that you'll see during volleyball is something called the Magnus effect, which was coined by a German scientist called Henrik Magnus, which basically explains that when you spin the ball, it curves in the direction of the spin. So a serve called a topspin, and you're spinning it so that it is going in a clockwise motion upwards, and the ball will curve accordingly and sort of drop over the net if the serve is done right, like you can see that I did, which was perfect. Not to brag or anything. The opposite of that is a backspin, which is self-explanatory. The ball spins counterclockwise, and because of that spin, it wants to go backwards, which against the motion of the forward motion is going to make the ball float in the air just a little bit longer. And lastly, I want to talk about a float serve, which has virtually no spin to it, and in order to get this effect, the ball has to have no spin when you're serving it, and your hand has to be open to displace the energy around the ball as to not create so that the contact is even and doesn't create a spin. In my video, I do not have a very good example of this, but it is a very advanced serve, and I guess I'm not as good as I thought I would be. I had a limited amount of time in that court, okay? Lastly, I want to be talking about spiking, which uses a lot of similar mechanics as serving does, the way that you approach the serve to gather momentum and where your hand placements are. If you're taller, you can curve your wrist to really get more of that downwards motion on a topspin. If you are shorter like me and the net is taller than you are, then having that snapping your wrist can do more harm than good if your arm's reach isn't as high enough to have the ball go over. But besides the point, in spiking, a steeper angle creates less time in the air, and it has less air resistance because of that, so it's a harder hit and it's harder to receive. And that does have to do with parabolas, because a larger parabola, so a spike that has less of a steep angle, or a larger angle, has more air time, more air resistance, so it has less energy and it's easier to receive. That does not take into account of how hard you're hit, how much energy you have. So if you have more momentum, you have more velocity, which increases the acceleration and increases the force, because force is mass times acceleration and momentum is mass times velocity. So you have more velocity, you have more acceleration, you have bigger forces. Nailed it. There's also a couple of more forces at play here. Obviously, if you're playing volleyball, if you're playing any sports, there's just so much physics going on. I do want to mention rotation is a very, very big thing in physics. How your body is rotated, how your your hips or your arms, the torque of your arms and your point of your rotation from your elbows to your shoulders play a big part as well. It's really fascinating stuff. And my dad, when I was first playing volleyball, I was able to have conversations with my dad, who is a physicist, and we got to talk a lot about the energy that you put into the ball and rotation of your body and your arms, of course. So, and I noticed that I was able to be a better player pretty quickly. And so whenever I can, I try to help my fellow players with those sorts of things. I really do. I love applied physics. I think it's great. And I had a lot of fun in this class. And if I don't pass this class, my physics dad is gonna disown me, I think, is what we decided on. So, yeah, give me an A. Thank you!